and welcome to Living Title IX with Betsy. That's me. This week we have an amazing special guest, and I am so excited to share Megan Farrell with you and Willie, her little pup back there in the back. We're excited to have him with us today. But Megan is an awesome partner with ICS, and we collaborate on work and share clients sometimes. And I am just really glad to pick her brain about what's going on in the Title IX space. But Megan, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, tell a little bit about what you do, and then we'll jump in.
Great. So, Betsy, it's great to be here. My name is Megan Farrell. I have my own Title IX consulting practice called Title IX Consult LLC. I do a lot of training, investigations, decision maker work for K-12s as well as colleges and universities. And I've been doing this work for, oh gosh, exclusively since 2011 when the regulations started to get very intense, or I should say, the guidance got really intense through Dear Colleague letters. And I worked as the first full-time Title IX coordinator for Palo Alto School District. It was a pretty intense time because they were in a resolution agreement with the Office for Civil Rights. And since that time, I've been working in this area, and I work with a number of clients throughout the country, just supporting them, and have the great opportunity to work with ICS as one of their partners. There are a number of times that situations come up that require us to work together, or maybe find another person to step in and add some piece of guidance to avoid conflicts and things like that. So it's wonderful to be here, and it's also wonderful to be a partner with ICS.
Yeah, absolutely. We love to have those strategic partnerships to make sure that we are referring clients to awesome colleagues as well. So we're so grateful to have you with us and to really just kind of talk through and pick your brain just a little bit on some things that you're seeing or expecting for this academic year. As we both and all, the whole world knows, it's been a challenging time in this space of figuring out what the next steps look like and how schools should comply, and really what the Department of Education is looking for in this area as well as other areas. So I'm curious, first of all, like, what are your thoughts, just general thoughts about what we are seeing right now and what we can expect moving forward?
Well, it's a big shift for Title IX coordinators, I believe. I certainly think as a Title IX coordinator in a K-12, we often would be worried if something didn't go the way the parents wanted it to, that they would file an OCR complaint. And we'd work with outside counsel who was also afraid of litigation coming in. And now we're seeing OCR not waiting for those complaints, not waiting for something to come in, but to really looking proactively to enforce the things they want to enforce by going to different schools, districts wide, and making some challenges. I currently live in California, and there has been a lot of press recently about a transgender athlete that participated in the CIF, is the name, California Institutional Federation. I'm not exactly sure what that name is, but it's basically the competitive group for all high schools, public high schools. And she participated, and she did win. And there was a challenge that's been brought by OCR about that. So it's definitely feels like OCR has its own goals, and then they are sometimes reacting to things that happen in the press, or seeking out things that they feel are important political motivators. So OCR and what risk OCR will be based upon, one particular investigation seems really unclear at this moment. But we are still required to follow the 2020 regulations, which are quite onerous as far as investigations go. So there's less of a fear if you maybe had a problem, but these regulations have now been in place for 5 years. For those of us who didn't change to the 2024 regulations, we've been enforcing these for a long time. They set a real high standard for investigations. And as we're seeing this evolution, it seems hard to believe that some of those 2020 regulations won't kind of bleed into the enforcement of other things like Title VI. So as we're preparing administrators, there's just a lot of things that are unknown, and also things that we probably didn't pay attention to in the past. With some of the challenges that we saw this year, and I definitely saw with the districts I work with, a slow increase in complaints that had to deal with national origin, had to deal with anything proactively signaling out a group, like a group of girls for a particular club, or maybe even a scholarship opportunity. And I think that the Title IX coordinator is really well placed to help with these other equity challenges and probably will be helping with them at the district level, even if that's not part of their job description or maybe their title at the moment. So I'll give you an example of something that we looked at one of the schools I work with, which is the clubs that students start. They usually have really carte blanche to decide what that club's going to be, who's going to be invited to participate. And we took a look at those, and there was only a handful, but there were clubs that had been designated for a particular ethnic group, for example, or people from a particular country. And we had to open up that so that anybody can participate. So, there's a lot of things that truly aren't Title IX, but I think Title IX coordinators will be adding to their list of responsibilities as we head into this school year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that whole compliance officer piece, bigger than just Title IX, is 100% on the way. And I love that you brought in Title VI. I think we will see more rigorous requirements under Title VI. Right now, it feels very loose in how schools are responding or are expected to respond, even without some strict expectations in those areas for processes and practices and procedures. And so 100% same page for sure. I love that you also brought up some athletic stuff. I think we are seeing the department really focus on athletics, whether it's transgender participation or just equity in athletics in general. We've seen, as we're recording this in July, the current administration's OCR resolutions have all been focused in the Title IX space on athletics. We haven't seen any resolutions on sexual harassment, which is completely rare and opposite to what we were seeing prior to this administration. So there's a lot of change happening, and I certainly appreciate those big thoughts. I think Title VI is where we're going to see it. I know we're called Living Title IX over here, but we are living all the titles. And so I think we're definitely should see school districts and especially institutions as well focusing on how to make sure that they are compliant in all the areas.
Right.
So one additional thing I would love your thoughts on, we've seen some funding freezes in the K-12 space. Have your schools, or have you heard anything from your schools that you're working with on how that's impacted them? And actually, we're recording on the 28th or 29th, excuse me, of July, and some of that money was just released back in the past couple of days to the schools.
So I have not had many clients that have been impacted by funding being taken away. But I will say that there is a huge concern, because if you work with K-12s, you know that their budgets are very, I mean, they're at the breaking point. Every year, teachers want increases in salaries. They're competing with other districts as far as what their salaries are. And there's just not a lot of wiggle room, not a lot of space to say, if we lose funding, we can just go to this large, our large reservoir of money or reserves to just fund certain things. So I know where I live, there are some very active parent groups that try and raise funds. I imagine there'll be a lot of pressure put on them. But if funding is taken away from a K-12, it could really crumble the district. It's unbelievable or hard to believe how a district could survive if the federal government takes a really strong line with regard to how they're going to fund or what funding they're going to take away. Because again, the budgets are really, really tight. There's not a lot of wiggle room for, we're going to fund this a different way. So it's the threat. Well, colleges face the threat, certainly, but there's definitely been a focus on colleges that do have some resources. The K-12 people just simply don't have those resources. So it's a very scary time, and I think people are very worried about it. I live in California, and as you know, I just mentioned the California litigation, but California has state law that's very strong support for transgender students across all areas. Access to anything, education, access to locker rooms, access to bathrooms, access to athletics, participation in athletics. That law has been in place since 2013. And now we're in conflict with federal law. And there used to be a time where if your state law provided a little bit more a little bit more protection, that would be okay. But that's not the way the federal government is looking at these things that have conflict. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. The California Department of Education took a pretty strong line when the OCR offered a resolution agreement to them and said, we don't believe the way you're interpreting the laws, the way we would interpret the law, which unfortunately, I mean, I agree with that decision, but unfortunately that could put the funding at risk, the federal funding at risk for California districts. So I think everyone's kind of waiting with bated breath to see what happens next.
Yeah, for sure. And these recent funding freezes, what I've seen locally, and as you know, I live in Tennessee. One of the things that I've seen is school districts being hesitant to fill positions because they're afraid, whether that's teachers or support staff or whomever it might be, because they're afraid that that money is not going to come through. I think one local district eliminated 31 positions, which is a substantial number of positions within the district. And then a couple of other things that we've seen is cutting down on that professional development that our schools are providing or able to provide, because that's where some of the funding has been taken away. And that's an area that we need to make sure, especially in the Title IX, Title VI, Title VII world, that our schools are getting trained and getting trained appropriately. And I know you work with a lot of training. We work with a lot of training schools, whether that's training their Title IX teams or Title VI teams or just their entire district. And we want to make sure that not only for business that stays, but for the impact that that's able to have on the employees and ultimately the students.
Right. And that's one of the things I love about ICS is you take the position that you're doing the right things for students. And doing it with even more limited resources is kind of frightening. I worry about Title IX coordinators who in most districts have a whole nother title, whether they're at the district office and they have, their assistant superintendent of student services or maybe even academics. They take this on, and you would imagine that in the future, if things continue the way they're continuing, and if there's any restriction on funding, that they're going to be wearing a lot of hats. And that can be really challenging, and really challenging as far as enforcement being done the right way. So that's why it's really important, I think, that school districts reach out to people who are experts in the field so they can make sure they can get the information they need right away. And sometimes I find that around Title IX, there's been so many iterations of the regulation, so many different ways things have been interpreted, that finding an expert to help you answer those questions can often be better than just relying upon your staff members or even outside counsel who may not have they may not really be very well developed in the Title IX space.
Yeah, we've done previous Living Title IXs on that communication with council and making sure that you're having the Title IX coordinators have real impact or real conversation with them with other additional experts so that they're aware, because the job of counsel, in-house counsel or external counsel, is so hard. And they're thinking through a lot of things, not just Title IX or the other compliance laws. So I want to end us on a positive note. So I see really what I see is let me go back and start this over. But what I see is a whole lot of on the ground professionals working really hard to get it right for their students. And I just want to celebrate all of that hard work as our team members, our practitioners on the ground are coming back into their schools. I want to celebrate them and say, like, you've got this. It is hard. We understand it's hard, but we don't want to be super negative for you all. We want you to know that you have support with ICF. You have support with lots of other partners, Megan included, out there to do this work alongside of you. And so I know you probably want to celebrate them as well, because this work is hard.
Absolutely. One of the guiding forces that I saw when I went from working with college and university to K-12s is that across the board, the administrators, the teachers, the employees of a school district are all dedicated to the student and making sure the student has the support they need. Whether we call it a Title IX support, supportive measures that way, but they've always been very dedicated to making sure students are successful. And I know that job is not getting easier. And I know that job's getting harder for all these professionals. But at the end of the day, I think doing right by the students is the most important thing, and making sure that they can grow and flourish and do well. And I know that that is really what motivates most of these employees. Even, the administrator who's just getting you to sign into the district. I think all of them feel education is really important and really a guiding force for them. So I applaud their work, and I just say, you're here and ICS is here, and I'm here to help support that work as best we can and make sure that students are protected, the regulations are met, and that you are protecting the district and doing the right thing by the students.
100%. Well, Megan, thank you so much. It's been lovely to chat with you. A couple of things before we head out. I want to highlight our most recent mug member or mugshot club member and celebrate you. And then also let our watchers, our viewers, know that if you comment #mugshot, we will get you one of these awesome mugs. And the only thing we ask in return is that you send us an amazing mugshot of you for us to share with our community. So please take care of that. And then, as always, I want to make sure that you laugh at yourself, that you support each other, and that you celebrate, not smell-abrate, that you celebrate the small victories because they are valuable every single day. So we are grateful for you. Thank you, Megan, and have an awesome week. We'll see you soon. Bye.